Hey there, geeks and geekettes, it's movie review time. Stephen King's Doctor Sleep. Ooh. So, Doctor Sleep tells the story of an older Dan Torrance teaming up with a powerful kid to battle an evil cult who are basically killing people with shining powers to achieve immortality. For me, this movie had its work cut out for it from the start because it's a sequel to a beloved Stanley Kubrick movie, obviously The Shining, and Stephen King hated it. This is a movie of a book that Stephen King wrote as a follow-up to The Shining novel, the original book being called Doctor Sleep. So much could have gone wrong with this. This could have been bad. So before I get into the review, I'm a massive horror fan, I'm a massive Stephen King fan, and I'm a massive Shining fan, both the book and the movie. Not so much the mini TV series because that hasn't aged well. There was some really ropey acting in there, the special effects were dire, but it was a closer rendition to The Shining than the movie. It just wasn't as good. So I wasn't overly excited about this movie. I'm not sure why, it just sort of seemed to pass me by. I watched a trailer, I was like, there's a Stephen King movie, it's a sequel to The Shining. And I only saw sort of bits of The Overlook, and I'm like, they're just going for nostalgia. So yeah, I wasn't excited about it, but me and Mrs. Geek, we try to have a date night once a week. Went to the cinema, Doctor Sleep was on, yeah, we'll go watch that. And none of us were overly excited about it, to be fair. And why were we surprised? Not only is this one of the best horror movies of 2019, which isn't a difficult feat really. Yeah, there were only two decent horror movies this year. This isn't just one of the best horror movies of 2019 for me. This is one of the best movies of 2019. Doctor Sleep was awesome. So this story is a great follow-up to The Shining. I think they use aspects of the book really well, the original Shining book and the movie, and they create a great narrative. I'm not sure how closely this follows the Doctor Sleep book, because obviously in the Shining book the Overlook was destroyed and in the movie it wasn't, and they go back to the Overlook in this, so that I'm guessing there's some differences. But to create this narrative is a work of genius, and in lesser hands would have been a confused cash-in at best and a total mess at worst. I mean, how do you take the concept of The Shining and a haunted house style story, and a story based around the sort of this guy's mental health failing him because of cabin fever and alcoholism, and how do you turn that into a sequel that's basically a good versus evil story? How do you take a troubled, complicated character like Danny Torrance and turn him into a protector of innocence, really, which is what he's doing? This little girl is being hunted by a cult, and they basically want to either eat her for her power or turn her to the dark side, so to speak. And we'll get into the cult a little bit later. But as well as protecting this little girl, Danny's got to face his own demons and his own past, the past of the Overlook Hotel and his own alcoholism, and trying not to turn into his father. And on paper, this concept shouldn't work. It sounds like a losing battle. Mike Flanagan is the director. He also directed Oculus, Hush, Gerald's Game, and Haunting of Hill House, and I enjoyed all of them. Oculus wasn't brilliant, but it was enjoyable. Hush was great, Gerald's Game was great, Haunting of Hill House was absolutely outstanding. And here he's created this sort of amazing horror story hidden amongst the good versus evil and almost a superhero film in points. He does build dread, he slowly builds on the terror, and when this movie is in the horror aspects, the horror elements, is an old school horror film. Doesn't rely on cheap jump scares, it doesn't rely on cheap thrills and studio trickery. And what a task he was set here, to respect King, to respect fans of the Shining book, to respect fans of the Shining movie, and to respect the fans of the Doctor Sleep book. You know, a lot of people have read it. So you've got to acknowledge 3 different sets of fans and not upset any of them. And hats off to the guy. Bravo, sir. You did really well. Now, onto the casting. Ewan McGregor is brilliant as an older Dan Torrance. But somehow he's not the standout character of this movie. Not like, obviously, Jack Torrance was in The Shining. He's more of an average guy that just happens to have these shining abilities. The movie shows Dan at various stages of his life. I mean, we catch up with him immediately after the events of the Overlook Hotel. Then we look at him as being this broken, down on his luck alcoholic. Then we see him trying to fix himself and sort himself out. Then we see a fixed Danny, you know, the man that he's grown into once he's got over his past and his demons. And then we see Danny as a protector to this character, Abra. And Abra, the character, shines in both her acting ability and her on-screen abilities, as in her powers with The Shining. She's a very powerful character, but it's not over the top where you feel like that this film is pointless because she's so powerful. She's genuinely in danger. She's a very, very good actress. And for me, child actors can be very hit and miss. They can be brilliant or they can be really distracting to a movie. And she's definitely in the former. She's absolutely brilliant. She plays a very different character to Danny. She's far more powerful and she's far more mature. Yes, the actor and the character is a little bit older than what Danny was in the original Shining, but she's got a maturity to her that Danny was missing. She wants to fight the evil. She wants to stick up for herself. She wants to get involved and use her powers. She's a great addition, to the story. But by a country mile, the best character of this movie is Rebecca Ferguson as Rose the Hat. She's the main antagonist of the movie. She's the leader of this sort of evil, vile cult. And if she doesn't turn into some sort of pop culture phenomenon in the future, I'll be shocked. For me, she's already an iconic villain of horror and fantasy. She's played awesomely. She's an awesome character to watch. She's quite a layered character. There's not just this evil, I have to eat children about her. She almost has as much screen time as the heroes, or maybe shares the same amount of screen time as the heroes in this movie. And she steals every scene she's in. Every scene she's in, you're glued to this character. She's outstanding. She's been around for decades, but we don't really know how long for. But she is truly evil. But there's a charisma and a quirkiness to her that make her likeable, despite the fact that she's doing some truly bizarre, evil, nasty, horrible things to innocent people. But she just chews up the scenery she's in. When I left the cinema, I said to Mrs. Geek, I'm pretty sure that the actress has based that performance on Stevie Nicks from Fleetwood Mac. The whole sort of gypsy vibe and just the way her mannerisms and movements. It'd be interesting to see in sort of a Blu-ray or something if that is what she based some of the character elements on. So yeah, the gypsy sort of dress works. And this character wearing this magician's hat on a lesser actor could have looked really stupid. Obviously this hat is where her name has come from and she wears it with pride, and now it would be hard to see Rebecca Ferguson without this hat, because she was so into this role, and it really does show. It's nice to see a villain that's not over the top, that's not overacting. She's vile, she's murdering children and people for her own selfish ends, but she's likable, and in fact, a lot of the villains are quite likable despite what they're doing, and that's really hard to do. She's charismatic for a brutal murderer, and just because of her sort of swagger, you almost want her to win and end up sort of stealing the scene at the end of the movie. I'd go as far as to say I would happily sit and watch a Rose the Hat prequel of how she became the leader of this cult and how she developed her powers. So the movie itself has a classic horror movie feel to it. It doesn't rely on loud noises, jump scares, stuff jumping at the screen and all of that stuff that's done to death in horror movies. It relies more on tension building and what you don't see. And it has this sense of impending doom, especially when you get back to the Overlook Hotel. Much like The Shining did, it's a slow burn, but it's so worth it. And although this movie, it isn't as much of a horror film as The Shining was, I mean, there's an action sequence in this movie involving firearms, and it's really well shot, and it's almost at odds with the rest of the film, but somehow the director's got it to work. But this movie is best when it's the horror, and when the horror is present, it focuses on the dark spaces and the dark spaces between rooms and between a slowly opening door. You see the darkness, but nothing jumps out. But your mind already starts thinking, what's in there? What could be jumping out? What's lurking in the dark? And you don't know if something is coming or what's coming. And that genuinely adds to the horror and the tension of this movie, and it's done right. I'm not normally a fan of fan service in movies because it can completely take you out of the movie, but when this movie does it, it does it right, and it takes you back to the original 1980 movie, but it's never distracting. Instead of using CGI or de-aging, they recast Jack and Wendy Torrance, and that works. It's far more believable than the plastic-looking de-aging processes that films have done. I mean, Marvel do it better, but a lot of films get that very wrong. I don't know who plays Wendy in this movie, but she almost passes a Shelley Duvall just from having similar hair or the same hair and her acting ability. There's no prosthetics, there's no technology, it's just good acting. And the same applies for the guy that plays Jack Torrance. They keep the scene so small that you barely register. I mean, you know it's not Jack Nicholson, but you barely register that there's too much going on, and that's only a good thing. So the third act, when we return to the Overlook Hotel in this movie, is absolutely outstanding. But the movie doesn't drag to get to this point because the Overlook is only in the sort of final third of the film. But everything building up to it isn't sort of dragging, it isn't there for no reason. But once we get to the Overlook Hotel, wow, this movie comes alive. Not to say it wasn't before, but when you watch Danny walk down the hallways of the Overlook Hotel and you watch the Overlook Hotel recognise him and slowly come to life with the lights, and then you see the ghostly residents sort of waking up and coming back, it puts the hairs up on the back of your neck, and it does it really well. It nails the atmosphere of the original movie perfectly, and it looks phenomenal. It looks like the original hotel that they recreated. This story is one of few that has earned the fan service in this film. It really does deserve it, and it really does pay off for the fans. There's nothing in this film that I found boring. There's nothing in this film that I would skip over. The film's 2.5 hours long. Doesn't feel 2.5 hours long, which is also a good thing because some movies can drag. There's nothing I would have chopped out of this movie, and to turn a Stephen King novel, even though I've not read it, I've read a lot of Stephen King, and I know that his books to screen really work, and to do it this well it's a massive feat by both directors, writers, cast and crew. This is such a good movie. So my final thoughts on Doctor Sleep: go and see it, and then go and see it again. Watch it twice. I'm going to watch it again. I hope this film doesn't slip under the radar. I can't wait to watch it again. It's great acting, great direction, outstanding villains, brilliant heroes. One of the most surprising films I've seen in a long time. And it's definitely one of the best horror films I've seen in a long time. It's definitely one of my favourite movies of 2019. It's definitely top 5. This movie is awesome. If you're a fan of The Shining, watch it. If you're a fan of horror, watch it. If you're a fan of Stephen King, go and watch it. This movie's got a 10 out of 10 review from me. So guys, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Was this movie a worthy sequel to you? Did the fan service work for you? Did the different sort of story work? Was good versus evil instead of a straight up horror a good idea? Did that work? So please like, comment, share, hit the subscribe button if you're new here, and then go and check out my other content. I've been the Bearded Geek. That was my review of Doctor Sleep, and I'll catch you all again soon. Goodbye.